Dude, I can't believe people still trust a single word out of Logan Paul's mouth. How many times must he lie to your face and scam you before you realize that he's not to be trusted? Okay, I'm pretty mad today, and let me explain why. So I made a video covering the George Janko situation where Logan's ex-best friend calls him out for completely snaking him. Basically, Logan deceptively edited a podcast cutting out George's sexual assault and humiliating his best friend by making him look like a complete joke for walking out when a comedian made fun of him. Now, we also went over a bunch of other things where Logan was a bad friend, and initially everybody was believing George, they were on his side. But then Logan made a 4-minute TikTok video, and it was a response video that was completely horrible, but somehow half the internet fell for it. Like, everyone's posting, Logan destroyed George with receipts over here. He got the proof, man. Oh my God, George destroyed. And I watched this video and I'm like, this guy lied about everything, which I'm gonna break down in this video. But how have people not noticed the trend? He gave the exact same response to CoffeeZilla after he got exposed at like the same tone and everything. I can't believe people are still falling for it. But whatever, let's expose this lying hack.
I had to start my own show because we're not making money on the show, and I'm getting pushed out.
You made money on the show.
I can show you my books. I was spending 10 G's a month being on the show.
All right, let's talk about this. Obviously, I wasn't on the podcast to represent myself, so I'd like to clarify a few things that were said. As well as having his own credit card, all expenses related to the show were paid for, including all travel and lodging. Obviously, George's total reimbursement came out to $20,000, 317 cents. I'd love to see any books that show otherwise. Spending $120,000 a year to be on a show is a little confusing.
Okay, so if we watch the actual podcast and not Logan's deceptive TikTok, George is talking about that specific month. Now, he's not talking about getting paid $5K for the entire time on the podcast, and he didn't lie. He did get paid $5K that specific month, and his personal expenses were $10,000 a month, so that's why he was making a loss, and that's why he wanted to leave. It's not a gotcha because Logan cut it right before he clarified that he was only talking about that month. And he even explicitly clarifies that the $10K a month, he's talking about personal expenses, shit like his mortgage and wanting to get married. He's not talking about travel expenses for the podcast or anything like that. Here's the full clip.
When Logan came after me for my religion, the show hit rock bottom and we weren't getting paid. I was getting paid $5,000 a month, and that's covering just Reed. I have a mortgage. I have my sister that works for me. I have Belle. I'm trying to get married. I had all these things. So I had to start my own show because we're not making money on this show, and I'm getting pushed out of this show.
Well, at the time, we weren't making money. You made money on the show.
But at the time, we're a couple months.
How much money did you make over the course
I can show you my books. I was spending 10 G's a month being on the show.
Okay, so you can even see that Mike, who is clearly still on Logan's dick, still backs up George, saying that, yeah, you weren't making money at that time. Now, I saw a bunch of people saying that, oh, he should be grateful that he's even getting $5K, or in total, George made $300K for the year and a half that he was on the podcast. But conveniently, what Logan leaves out is that George was unpaid on the podcast for 2 years, and when he finally did start getting paid, that's when he got a total of $300K for the remaining time. So technically, it wasn't $300K in 1.5 years, it was $300K for 4 years, which is less than $100K a year. Now, even then, when the general public watches this, I understand why people are like, whoa, that's so much money, George should be so grateful over here, but you don't understand the levels over here, okay? This is not real life. This is Impulsive with Logan Paul over here. For a show like Impulsive, Logan is nearly making 100 to 200 times the amount. So for a co-host of the podcast to get about like 1% of the profits, maybe even lesser, is completely crazy. And even then, George was still grateful. Now, after this, Logan pulls another classic manipulation move here where he pretends George is just stupid and doesn't understand what he's talking about.
This is a guy who's sending us screenshots of $11 million a week that he's making.
This statement is so crazy that it's almost laughable. That would mean I'm making $572 million a year. I'm nowhere near that. What happened was Prime had a very successful month. I think we did like 60 to 70 million, and I sent it to our group chat because I was proud of the business. I was stoked to show the boys, and I think George maybe misinterpreted that as like my personal income.
Okay, so he once again disproved nothing, and George did not misinterpret anything as well. Logan did actually send him screenshots of earning a significant amount of money in weeks. Seems to be 60 million while paying George $5K 300K that month. And yes, it's not Logan Paul's personal income, but if your company is making $60 million, then any person would reasonably assume that you're getting a decent chunk of that. It's really frustrating how he frames this, and then everyone takes a side because he just leaves out all the correct context. Also very sus on that Logan sent the screenshot because he's so stoked to show his boys. Or is it just a brag, bro? I wouldn't put it past him there.
The show hit rock bottom and we weren't getting paid. I was getting paid $5,000 a month.
But you did make a sizable amount of money on the show.
And by the way,
would you say,
always grateful. I was always grateful
like
for
that?
it. Yeah, I don't like to talk about money.
I know he doesn't want to talk money. I know he believes it out, but George made $317,000 in the 15 months that he got paid for on Impulsive. The work requirements consisted of about 3 days a month, 3 hours each day, traveling the world, networking, and meeting some of the coolest people ever. It comes out to about $2,300 per hour, and he also had 10% equity of the entire show.
Okay, so this is the part where people are like, oh my god, George is cooked. All right, look at all these receipts over here. Oh my god, Logan bought out the paper. Yeah, so let's just look into that for a second. First off, George was on the podcast for nearly 4 years, yet he's only been paid for 15 months. He was unpaid for 2 years, as I said. Never mentions that once. Obviously, Logan is not going to mention the fact that he was unpaid for such a long time, because that's an absolutely huge deal and skews the numbers completely. It's not 300K in 15 months now, it's 300K in about, I don't know, 12 times 4, 48 months. Second off, bringing up the perks of the job is so ridiculous. Like, everybody knows that podcasting is a fun job with traveling the world and shit. It doesn't justify what you did. And the framing he actually put there was that George basically did nothing. So he said, oh, George only works 3 days a month, basically implying that the rest of the time he's just lying on his ass doing nothing and he's getting overpaid like so much over here. But that's obviously false just from the word like networking there. Like, he obviously helps with the show a ton, and that is included into his work. Yes, you film like 3 days, but that's the least important part of it. And clearly, George knows how to research and to prepare for a podcast, considering he made one of his own and it's pretty successful. It's pretty obvious he was helping out behind the scenes. Now, I don't know why Logan added this next part. He probably thought he was being generous. He brags about 10% equity in the show. What? He's a fucking co-host and a personality who was successful enough to make his own podcast. So 33% would be more accurate for 3 hosts of the podcast. Not to mention that he's promoted Prime about 1 billion times on the podcast, and it's a large part of its success. And George has 0 equity in Prime, which went on to make $1 billion. So obviously George is salty because you cut him out of the biggest payout ever. Now this next part, Logan lies yet again.
Not you, not Caleb, not Kevin, not Dylan. Nobody fucking called me when I got fired.
George did not get fired. He quit. I'll touch on that in a second. But after he quit, I called him frequently. I reached out. I wanted to reconcile the friendship. I invited him to my birthday party and WrestleMania and even my ranch a few weeks later. He chose not to come. He also unfollowed all the people he mentioned on Instagram, which is maybe why they didn't call him. I don't know. I can't speak for them, but he still does not follow them to this day.
This is crazy. Once again, Logan cuts the clip right before George says that yes, Logan did actually call him, but only to shit on him, which is why it's not genuine. Here's the clip where he says that.
Not you, not Caleb, not Kevin, not Dylan. Nobody fucking called me when I got fired. Not one person called me. You know what I get a call from? Logan saying, at least Mike wouldn't do this.
So he literally said exactly what you said, yet you painted him out to be a liar. Honestly, just seeing the comment section of Logan's video made me lose faith in humanity. People believe a proven fucking liar, like an insane track record of lying and manipulating, and they still believe words out of his mouth. It is insane. And nobody bothers to watch the actual, like, full podcast there. It's crazy. I know people don't have time or whatever, and only get their news from, like, little TikToks or whatever, but it's frustrating.
And then on my birthday, you guys shot 3 episodes, so I couldn't show up.
The 2 episodes he's talking about, not 3, were shot 4 days after George's birthday. His birthday's on January 3rd. We shot those episodes on January 7th. We were already in Vegas signing the UFC to Prime, and as we do, want to capitalize on the location and our use of time and energy and the guests in that city. George didn't come to work because he wanted to spend time with his family for his belated birthday, which I totally understand and we even praised.
One of the things that I love about George, he prioritizes his family and friends over anything.
Okay, so yes, George was spending time with his family on his, like, birthday week over there, but it didn't come out of nowhere. This part, again, Logan leaves out the very important information that George says that his birthday has been on the calendar for months, meaning everybody knew exactly when he would be unavailable, and they specifically chose to record when he wasn't there to cut him out because they were already beefing and, you know, tensions were high, and Logan Paul just wanted to spite him.
And then on my birthday, you guys shot 3 episodes, so I couldn't show up.
I just think
on my 30th birthday, you shot 3 episodes. Bro.
I think
that's crazy. It was on the calendar for months.
I think by the time we got there, there was so much, like, confusion and disarray in the podcast that there was no coming back.
Even Mike confirms it over there. He doesn't dispute it at all. He's just like, he tries to give excuses. He's like, okay, there was a lot of confusion and that's why we did it on, you know, on your birthday week or whatever. But the fact that it's not on the exact birthday, that's semantics over there. It was in the time where he was visiting his family and he could not, you know, film on that time.
I got my show going, and then not only was I controlled and pushed around on impulsive, but then Logan's making calls and directing my show. He told me that I couldn't take Celsius.
So this is the big one. Making calls, trying to make it seem like I wanted to control his show is absolutely ridiculous. As you can see right here, I was like, hey, we got to get you Prime because I saw him drinking our competitor.
Okay, so let's read this message. Bro, we got to get you Prime. Don't drink our competitor, you goose. Call me back. I have to tell you something. Okay, so basically that's Logan panicking because he actually found out that you got to deal without him, and your money-grubbing hands are like, oh, no, he must only promote Prime, even when you don't pay him enough to stay with you.
And he told me to call him. He was filming my reaction to tell me he took a deal with a competitor. I told him, please don't film. Like, I'd like to talk about this. I hope you're joking, by the way. The truth is, I thought it was a bad look that my best friend and co-host took a brand deal with our competitor without consulting me, asking me, giving us even a chance to match it before he signed the deal. Because the audience that he's building, at least at the time, on his own podcast was being funneled directly from the podcast that I was building with him. I said, hey, dude, I understand you need to make money. The entire text is right here that I sent him after our conversation, because I did understand his position if he needed to make money, but I thought it was also a little odd because he did make $317,000 in 15 months. Regardless, I did tell him I can't have him on impulsive if he's going to take the deal with the competitor, but if after he makes the money he wants to come back to the podcast, he's more than welcome.
Okay, so let's read this text as well. Totally understand what you have to do. I support your decision. I respect the fact that you're focusing on your platform, and I understand that you have to pay the bills. I'm sorry, impulsive isn't enough for that. Just like you're looking out for yourself, I have to do the same. My business partners and I don't find it appropriate to promote one of our biggest competitors. I'm excited to watch what you build your podcast, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so in that little clip before that, Logan Paul keeps saying, oh, you made it $300K in 15 months, bro. How could you possibly be unsatisfied? You're so greedy. You want more money. You went to a competitor over here. But the thing is it a crime to want more money so that you can pay off your mortgage and get married? Like, he literally specifically states his reasons as to why he wanted more money and he wanted to go make his own podcast, because he's an ambitious guy and he wanted to make more money. And if George feels like he isn't getting paid enough, he's perfectly entitled to go somewhere else and work where he's satisfied. And let's not do this. You're a multi-millionaire, borderline billionaire, and your cheap ass can't even pay your own fans that you scammed with your crypto bullshit. It's rich coming from Logan Paul here talking about making enough money for George when you had him unpaid for 2 fucking years. Man, people are actually siding with the Japan forest guy, dude. Where we live in a simulation, really. Not to mention, Logan's like, oh yeah, he never gave me a chance to match the deal with Prime. When he did, he said you could even pay him half of what Celsius was paying him, and he'd take the deal. But you refused to give him a single dime and insulted him to his face. So of course, George took the competitor.
I will take half the deal that Celsius gives me. Half. If you want to put it on the table for my show, a quarter, work with me. He says, I won't pay you a dime. You're here because of me. And then I said, well, what do you want me to do for my bills, bro? I got no money. And he says, go have your rich dad pay for it.
Oh, interesting. Convenient that he leaves that out of the TikTok, guys. Lots of just coincidences and conveniences happening over here. Logan be like, he never gave me a chance to match the deal. You're such a liar. It's crazy. Like, I'm not even George over here. I'm not a George dick writer or anything. I don't really care about the guy, but it's just so unjust how Logan Paul is manipulating the entire situation.
Hey man, where you're at, there's no room for you to grow. They won't let you grow. They will not let you grow.
I thought saying that to Mike was a little crazy. He's grown a lot. He has 2.7 million subscribers since we met. He's a multimillionaire, a best-selling author. I tried as much as I could to help him get into those positions, and it's not entirely because of me. Mike is a phenom in his own right, and he capitalized on the platform that I gave him, which is awesome. Just like George is doing now. But if that's not growth, like what is?
Once again, Logan Paul showing that he's a complete sociopath. So when George was talking about growth, he's talking about personal growth. Not everything is about money, turns out, you degenerate freak.
But now I have confidence. Now I could stand on my own show. I have my own finance. I have my own fiance. I have my own life.
Right.
That's why when I sit here and have these conversations with you, this is the best version of me because I went through the fire. I want to sit with you and say, bro, like, you think that you're done growing, you're not. You have so much more to give, because those moments that we would have in the hotel rooms by ourselves, those were us. You saw the version of me that everybody sees now behind closed doors. I saw that version of you.
Yeah,
and I'm excited to show that version to other people.
Okay, so he's obviously talking about personal growth in that podcast, and that's why he recommends that Mike actually leave Logan, which I will also recommend, but Mike is obviously tethered to that cock. But yeah, he's talking about personal growth here. Of course, George would be able to grow monetarily, but nobody really wants to grow alongside Logan freaking Paul because you have no morals, you have no soul, you're a scammer, you insulted his religion, you insulted him as a person, you don't value him as a friend. He can also probably see that you have no morals with your crypto scam bullshit and refusing to pay out such a small sum for you as well. So he's talking about growing in a meaningful way, like growing in character, you know? Something that you obviously would never understand because everything in Logan Paul's world is about business and money and prime.
In fact, I think people forget, like, I praised George for starting a podcast, like, a lot.
Georgie started his own podcast. I think it's a great idea. I always love when my co-hosts venture out and do their own things.
What a nice guy, guys. What a nice guy, Logan. He loves it when his co-host ventures out. Like, this is that meme where you're smiling on the outside and then you're crying on the inside. I don't know why he feels the need to portray himself as this like actual god who is okay with anything. Just admit that you're annoyed and angry that your co-host is leaving. Pretty much anyone would be mad at that, okay? But he has to pretend that he's so happy for George because Logan Paul has to have infallible character over here. He's such a good guy, obviously. I mean, you're losing a good co-host and then you're getting a competitor podcast. Obviously, you're not going to be happy over that, but Logan has to pretend everything is roses and daisies because good guy Logan, obviously, he just wants the best for everybody.
Congratulations. It's awesome, guys. Check out his podcast.
And also saying they won't let you grow was a little hurtful because I thought at least I helped Mike do some of the things that he did, and I even encouraged him to start his own podcast.
I think you should take a page out of Georgie's book and start a show of your own.
Okay, this is so disingenuous because Logan Paul is pretending like Mike would ever in a million years even consider betraying Logan over here. Mike is so firmly attached, suckling on his milky bosom that he knows that he could slaughter his entire family in cold blood and Mike would probably give him a blowjob, okay? You suggesting to Mike start another podcast is obviously a joke and you know he would never ever do it, okay? This is by far the worst part. You're like a manipulative girlfriend, like, oh, you can go talk to her, you know, when you know like that guy has like no chance with her or something, you know, it's just so weird, bro.
Isn't to say, by the way, that I didn't fuck up along the way. I did. I should not have mocked his beliefs. I apologize for that. I should have stuck up for him with Bobby Lee, and I definitely should have had his back more like a friend. There's a lot of things I would have done differently, but here we are. It saddens me that our story has unfolded this way. I wish him nothing but health, wealth, happiness, all the success that he wants, and I hope that one day we can sit down and have a relationship and a conversation.
Okay, so obviously the biggest part of the entire situation was Bobby Lee and how George was allegedly sexually assaulted, and you cut that out of the podcast and then you humiliated him to millions of people. You made it look like he walked off the podcast for not taking a simple joke, and you know, everybody is laughing at him. And the only thing you addressed here, you brushed past it saying, oh no, sorry about that. No details at all though. So all those people saying, oh, Logan came with the receipts. Where's the receipts for this part then? The most important part. If you want to give receipts, then please release the raw footage of the podcast where apparently nothing bad actually happened to George and he's overreacting or something. Because brain dead people on the internet are like, oh, Logan has all these receipts or whatever, when all of the stuff he showed was completely irrelevant. Nobody gives a single shit about George's total income. By the way, he wanted to keep that private as well. Logan, the dumbass over here, exposed everything. That was such a minor point. What people actually want to know is why you are threatening to fire your friend for speaking up about harassment. Real receipts would actually be the unedited podcast footage proving that there's actually zero sexual assault that happened. But of course, you can't do that because it actually did happen and you're a massive liar. Anyways, I'm gonna burst a blood vessel over here, so that's it for Logan Paul. Serial L taker, too big to fail at this point. Hopefully any Logan dick riders can watch this and understand how he's completely manipulating you. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Bye-bye.